It was the smell that woke me. I've never been able to fully describe it. Rancid, almost sweet, like something old and rotting, but with an underlying musk of damp earth. A fetid odor that slithered through my room in the dead of night, its presence so heavy it clung to the air like a thick fog. I remember waking, eyes snapping open, heart thumping. My room was pitch black, the kind of oppressive darkness that wraps itself around your skin and clings to you with a suffocating pressure. I held my breath for a moment, hoping the stench would dissipate as quickly as it had come. But it didn't. There it was again, in the back of my throat, making me gag. My pulse quickened, my skin crawling with the gnawing sensation of being watched. I told myself it was just the house settling, maybe the old wood beams creaking in the night, the usual sounds that came with this century-old apartment. But this was different. I sat up slowly, the sheets cold against my skin. The smell was unmistakable. It was coming from somewhere in my room. I tried to make out the shape of my surroundings, but everything was a blur in the pitch black. I reached over to the nightstand, fumbling for the lamp. When I found the switch and flipped it, the dim light flickered to life, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and contort unnaturally across the walls. Nothing in my room seemed out of place. No visible source for the smell. I was alone. But the feeling of being watched didn't leave me. I rubbed my eyes, blinking hard, as if doing so would push the tension out of my mind. But it didn't. It was still there, gnawing at me. I stood up, my legs stiff from sleep, and walked across the room to the open window. The cool night air rushed in, filling my lungs, but the smell lingered, clinging to the back of my throat, sticking to the hairs in my nose. I leaned out the window, hoping the breeze would carry it away, but nothing changed. I took a breath, feeling the weight of exhaustion in my limbs, and told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a bad dream. The house was old, and old houses smelled strange sometimes. But even as I repeated the words in my mind, they didn't feel true. The days that followed were no better. At work, I found myself distracted, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept catching glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision, shadows darting behind desks, figures shifting in the corner of my eye. Every time I turned to look, nothing was there. And then, one morning, I found a note on my desk. It was simple, just a piece of lined paper, crumpled but neatly folded, with my name scribbled hastily across the top. I opened it with trembling hands. "I can see you." The words were barely legible, the ink smudged in places. But the message was clear. My heart skipped a beat. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone standing behind me, watching me. But no one was there. Just the usual hum of office noise, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, the clack of keyboards, the faint rustle of papers. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was a prank, one of the guys from HR with too much time on their hands. But the pit in my stomach grew deeper with each passing minute. I crumpled the note, tossing it into the trash, as though by discarding it, I could forget about it. But the sensation didn't go away. That night, as I lay in bed, the shadows on my walls seemed to stretch longer than they should have. I could hear the faintest whispers, so quiet at first, I thought I was imagining it. But they grew louder, more distinct, though I couldn't make out the words. They were there. I froze, my breath catching in my chest, my eyes wide and unblinking in the dark. My heart pounded in my ears, a frantic rhythm that drowned out everything else. The whispers came from the corners of the room, moving, swirling around me like a living thing. I wasn't sure how long I lay there, trembling, my body frozen with terror. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. Time didn't make sense in that moment. But then, suddenly, there was a sound. a soft, deliberate creak from the direction of the door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The handle of my bedroom door, smooth, polished brass, was turning, slowly, inch by inch. A soft rattle, then a final click. The door was open. No one was there. I didn't dare move. I just lay there, my skin slick with sweat, my hands shaking uncontrollably at my sides. Eventually, the whispers stopped. The door stayed open, a yawning dark void in the corner of my room. The next day, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I'd tried to write it off as sleep deprivation, stress from work, but deep down, I knew what I was experiencing wasn't just in my head. The whispers, the creaks, the flickering lights, the feeling of someone or something following me. I started to do some research, hoping to find an explanation that would bring me some peace of mind. And that's when I found it. A small article buried deep within a local news website. It was about the apartment complex I lived in, the same one I had moved into just 6 months ago. The article described several unexplained deaths in the building over the past 30 years. Strange accidents, fires that couldn't be traced to any clear cause, and most disturbingly, the story of a woman living in the same unit I now occupied, who had disappeared without a trace. Her name was Emily Harris. She had lived in apartment 4B, the one directly across from mine. She had been a quiet woman, a writer, but neighbors reported hearing strange noises coming from her apartment just before she vanished. Some said she had gone mad, speaking to herself, claiming to hear voices in the walls. Others said she had seen a man in her apartment, though no one had ever found any sign of him. No one had ever found Emily either. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, the weight of the discovery pressing down on my chest. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I searched for more information. But there was nothing else. The phone rang just then, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was my landlord. "Just wanted to check in, make sure everything's all right in your unit," he said, his voice too casual. "Everything's fine," I replied, my voice thin, though I couldn't believe the words as they left my mouth. "Great, just making sure," he said before hanging up. But his words didn't sit right with me. Why had he called? Was he checking up on me, or was it just another coincidence? It wasn't until I walked into my apartment that evening that the terror fully took hold. The lights flickered. A soft whispering sound came from somewhere. Behind the walls, underneath the floorboards, I couldn't tell. I rushed to the window, throwing it open, desperate to get some air. But outside, the street below was empty. The city still, the dark sky watching over me like a suffocating veil. That's when I saw it. In the reflection of the window, I saw a figure, a pale face, a woman with wide, empty eyes staring at me from behind me, right in my own apartment. I whipped around, my body stiff with shock, but nothing. The room was empty, silent. The smell, the rotting stench, had returned stronger now, and I knew it wasn't just in my head. I could hear her now. Emily. Her voice, soft and broken, murmuring to me from the darkness. "I'm still here. You're not alone." I don't know how much time has passed since that night. Maybe it's been days, maybe weeks. I've stopped keeping track. The whispers won't stop. The shadow that follows me, that watches me from the corners of my room, is growing stronger, and I can feel her presence closing in. I'm not alone, and I'm not sure I ever was. As I sit here now, writing this, I realize I may not be the first one to live in this apartment. Maybe Emily never left. If you've enjoyed this chilling tale and want to hear more spine-tingling stories from the dark corners of the world, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stay tuned for more terrifying tales, unsolved mysteries, and paranormal experiences right here on Haunted Chronicles. And remember, the darkness is never truly empty. There's always something lurking just out of sight.